Our postcard today has an English royal dynasty stamped all over it. We're in the city of Lancaster. We're looking at some very old walls there, aren't we, Chris?
You are indeed, yes. These are believed to be part of the original Norman curtain wall of Lancaster Castle. So, give or take a year or two, these are 800 years old. You can see the depth of them here.
Yeah, they're really thick.
Getting on for 10 feet thick. And what you have to bear in mind is that for a lot of the Middle Ages, this was really very close to the Scottish border. And there was a lot of trouble across the border. In fact, our most famous visitor really was a Scotsman, Robert the Bruce, came here.
Did he really?
He did, yeah. He was here in 1322. He marched his army across Morecambe Bay, which was the most direct route from Scotland, attacked the castle, but he couldn't get in. It's on a wonderful defensive position. It's got these beautiful walls to protect it. It's got its own water supply. So they withheld the siege, and in a fit of anger, he left the siege of Lancaster Castle and burnt the town down around it as he went. So he's got a bit of a mixed reputation locally.
Robert the Bruce,
but he was a very great man.
Menacing and sinister are the two words that spring to mind here, Christine.
Very good words, yes. There's no getting away from the history of this place. It's very grim, actually. This is Hadrian's Tower, and this was built by probably one of the biggest villains ever to sit on the throne of England, King John. He didn't do very much good for the country at all, but he did Lancaster a power of good. He rebuilt the castle here, added this tower around 1200. And we know exactly how much he spent. It was £369, 16 shillings and 9pence.
Really?
That's right. Yeah, it's in the old records. But that was a lot of money, of course, in 1200. And this was the latest style, a nice round tower. Before this, they were mostly square. But if you were under siege, they could dig a tunnel under the corner of the tower, set a fire, and then the corner of the wall would fall down. Everyone would rush in and kill the inhabitants. So this was a much safer way of doing things, a sort of real innovation in the 1200s.
And was it as it looks, with these manacles, and was it a torture place?
No, it wasn't really. No, torture is a bit misunderstood in this country. It was never really allowed in law. I mean, the Inquisition never came to England. The Tudors used it for people accused of treason. These aren't actually instruments of torture, although they look like it, don't they?
They do.
These are about 200 years old, and they were used on prisoners held here. As you can see, they're all shapes and sizes. They're incredibly heavy, some of them. The most interesting is the long chain that goes around the wall.
Oh, I can see that, yeah.
And those shackles are intended to fit around the neck. And they would be used on people destined for transportation to Australia.
Oh.
Yeah, you would be chained hand and foot, and then 20 or 30 of you all chained together and taken down to the docks and put on board a ship.
That's St George's Docks.
St George's Quay, down
yeah.
Or
yeah.
they probably wouldn't go direct to Australia from Lancaster. They would go down to London or one of the south coast ports, and then they'd be sent off, and a third of them died before they reached Australia, and a lot of them we just don't know what happened to them. But we do get a lot of Australian visitors coming voluntarily the other way.
Who said they had relatives in here.
That's right. They know for sure, because they kept very detailed records when they landed in Australia, that their great-great-grandfather or whoever was sentenced at Lancaster Castle.
So was it mainly local people, Lancashire people?
It would be Lancashire people, yes. Some villains, some people were lucky to go, they would have been hanged otherwise. But there were trade unionists, Irishmen were sent as well, when there was a lot of trouble in Ireland at the time.
And is it true for some of the most, menial crimes?
Oh yes, yeah, the one that always springs to my mind is the 15-year-old girl who was sentenced here in the 1820s. She got 7 years transportation, and her crime had been to steal one silk handkerchief from her employer.
Really?
She said she was putting it in her pocket to take it to the laundry, and nobody believed her. And
That's really sad.
It's terribly sad, because we don't know what happened to her. We don't know if she ever survived the trip or lived to come home and see her family again. So, yes, there's a lot of tragedy there as well.
What's in these cabinets here?
Right, various assorted artefacts. At the end is a straitjacket.
Looks like a bit of leather thonging to me.
Absolutely, yes.
I've seen in Blackpool nightclubs those kind of things.
I'm sure you have, yeah. It fits around the waist and fits over your ankles, and those things are for your hands. They're like the old muffs that Victorian ladies used to wear, really, but once you're chained into them, you can't use your hands at all. And you can just see at the top a hood so you could completely incapacitate.
Was that for people who were mad or said to be mad?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
But there again, you know, you could be locked up in the madhouse for having an illegitimate child, so they weren't all by any means, you know,
Goodness me.
as maniac as people think they were.
And is that, what do they call that?
This is the famous Scold's Bridle.
That's right,
Yeah,
Scold's
that's right.
Bridle.
Scold's Bridle. That fits over the head, right? There's a piece of metal that goes into your mouth, and that is actually designed to hold the tongue down. So while you're wearing this, you can't speak. Of course, you can't eat or drink either, so you only wore it for an hour or two. It was a bit like the stocks. They would drag you down to the marketplace and chain you to a post, and then people were allowed to pelt you with various nasty things, you know, rotten fruit and vegetables.
Lovely, lovely.
The crime, you'll be interested to know, was either to spread malicious gossip about your neighbours or, heaven forbid, nag your husband too much in public.
Goodness me, I think the malicious gossip one maybe that could come in handy
Could
even in this
well
day
do,
and
yeah,
age.
yes.
But
A lot of our visitors want replicas of that, actually.
I'm sure they do.
So there you
You've
go.
got one more thing up here with a person's hand with an M on. I don't think I've ever seen a picture like that before.
No, you won't have, because this is unique. It's the only one of its kind in the country. This is actually in the dock of the old assize court here. And what makes ours unusual is that the punishment took place in open court. People were always being sentenced to be branded and whipped, but it was done away from the public gaze. But this is actually done, well, it's still where it's always been, basically. So the punishment ordered by the judge would be carried out in front of the jury and the members of the public watching on, and your family and friends as well.
And was that to be... Oh.
That's the original branding iron next to it.
Gosh.
And it has M engraved in the top. That was heated until it was red hot. The M was burned into the palm of your hand. And the M stands for malefactor, which means evildoer.
So what happened to the Lancashire witches?
Well, they suffered really for the times they lived in. It's a very interesting story. They are the most famous witches in English history. And it started very quietly, really. As with a lot of people accused of witchcraft, those involved were poor, and they earned their living by begging, basically. There were two families involved, and they were both headed by women, which in itself, in the 17th century, was a danger. They were both elderly. They were known by their nicknames, Old Chattocks, because she used to wander around mumbling to herself, and Old Demdike. The key events actually happened just before Easter in 1612, when one of Old Demdike's granddaughters, Alison Device, was begging near Colne. She stopped a man called John Law and asked him to give her a needle, as simple as that. He refused. He went about 20 yards down the road and collapsed. Now, from what we read, it's obvious he'd had a stroke, but he, of course, believed that she'd cast a spell on him, bewitched him. And she admitted it. She was arrested, so was Old Demdike and her brother James. They were brought here to Lancaster Castle. The story then goes that the rest of the coven met on Good Friday and planned to free their relatives, kill Thomas Covell, who was the governor of the castle, and blow the place up. Well, I mean, you can believe that if you want to, but it was a very good reason for the authorities to round everybody else up. And eventually they were brought here, all of them. And they were held in a dungeon very similar to this, but underground. The story goes that those people spent 5 or 6 months down there, chained to the floor in the darkness. Old Demdike, who was in her 80s, died down there. The rest of them came to trial in August, and 10 people were convicted of being witches, because that's what they believed in the 17th century. You could sell your soul to the devil. Even the king believed it. And they were hanged 3 days later in Lancaster. The interesting thing about this is that it's the first time anyone sat down in court and wrote down what everyone said. And he later published it, and you can still actually read transcripts of the trial. Thomas Potts, his name was, and it's called The Wonderful Discovery of Witchcraft in the County of Lancaster. And if you read that, it's quite obvious that what got them hanged was the evidence of a child. She was 9 years of age. Her name was Janet Device. So you'll guess she was another of Old Demdike's granddaughters. And in a way, her evidence hanged her own mother, her brother and her sister. And of course, her grandmother had already died in prison. There is a ghost story. Every castle should have one. The middle cell has seen 3 separate manifestations of the same thing. And it's been seen by 3 people who didn't know the other 2 stories.
That's always good evidence.
Absolutely, that's what starts you thinking, to be honest with you, even if you're sceptical. No, the ghost of a child has been seen in that cell on 3 occasions. And there is a very famous book locally by a man called Cross Fleury. It's called Time Honoured Lancaster. And there is a story of an 18-month-old boy who was brought in for vagrancy with his mother. And he was obviously ill, and he died overnight in the cells. Now, we don't know if it's him, we don't know where he was held, but it just seems a bit of a coincidence to us.
And how long was the time span between these three different stories?
About a year, yeah.
But it was visitors or people who worked here?
Both. The first time was about 3 years ago when a guide said she saw what she thought was a bundle of rags with a hand sticking out. And it was literally the blink of an eye and it had gone. The second time was a visitor who was looking past the guide who was standing in the door. And she said, "Oh my God, what's that?" And it was the same thing. And then a separate independent person, the third time, who said that she was a medium. We get a lot of people around here who claim to be mediums or even witches for obvious reasons. And she said that something had touched her on the ankle, which was the sign she got for the presence of the spirit of a child.
Well, our big, brave Chris, the cameraman, is having a look through that cell now and looking around. Whilst he's in there, what's those little doors up there for?
Right, those were really the only way that prisoners got any light or air.
Oh.
It was never fresh air. There is no window in the cells, as you can see. So what you got was second-hand to begin with. But once that door is closed and bolted shut, it's pitch black.
Ta-da!